Each one of us, I believe, have been able to feel the presence and the willingness to be present from each other. I can rely on that you want to be here, that it cares, that matters to you.
Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple, a practical podcast that guides clinical leaders and healthcare managers to create trust and support with their teams. I'm your host, Trace Hobson. Join me for weekly interviews, practical tools, and inspiring transformational stories of bringing people together in healthcare. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple. As many of you know, as you're listening to the episodes of this podcast, my position is that whenever you have a psychologically healthy and safe space and a neurobiologically safe space, transformation happens. But why is that? What are the principles that are underneath that? And can they be applied in different places? At the beginning, you heard an introduction, and that is my family call, a family call that we created several years ago, and especially ramped up during COVID-19 to have connection and support for our family. And we use the same principles that I use in teamwork, in organizational development work to create a safe space. Because when we create that kind of space, we've experienced over and over again, transformation happens. But why? Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because there is a sense of intrinsic answers to three fundamental questions that people have inside them, whether they're asking them overtly or not. And in any setting, when people are with you as an individual or on a team or in a family, they're really asking, is this a place where I'm going to be accepted and supported? Is this a place that I can trust? Is this a place that I know the people care about me? And as people get answers to those questions that are in the affirmative, that yes, I can trust this space and these people, and I can rely on the fact that they're supportive and accepting of me, and that they really do care and want me to be the best that I can be. As we get answers to those questions, the space becomes more and more transformational. The things that we would struggle alone in become something that we're supported in overcoming. So whether it's personal growth or professional growth, it happens in this kind of a space. It's sort of like the fertile soil that plants are planted in. Not that I have no green thumb, but I know that if there's an environment where growth can happen, then it will happen. It will happen naturally. Well, for us as human beings, for us to reach our full potential and to be the kinds of people that we want to be in our lives and in our work, we have to have nurturing environments, and we have to carve out intentional time for that to happen. And this is not a skill that I learned growing up in my family. It wasn't a skill that my family had. And it wasn't a skill that I learned in organizations either. It's a skill that I had to develop out of sheer desperation, and also an inner longing that I think isn't unique with me or with my family, but is really inside of all of us as human beings. And that is this longing for connection and for support and an unconditional love that helps us to be the best that we can be each day. So to give you an example of that, I decided to share a very short excerpt from our family call. And our family call was designed to be a place for our family to come to, my mom, my dad, and my sister. But it ended up being a very nurturing environment for my daughters, for our grandchildren, for a whole bunch of family members to come to, because we created a safe space transformation table, a table where people could come to and join the table and bring their voice and share in a way that answered those intrinsic questions, where they knew that they were loved and accepted no matter what they said. They knew that they were really cared for when they got there, and that even when they weren't there, there was a place at the table for them that was being held for them. And so some of the members of the family leave and they come back, and they're not there all the time. And then other members of the family have been consistently at our family call over and over again, and come back for that kind of support that they are discovering that they long for, that they've always wanted, and that is really propelling them forward. And so I give you this example because these are the kinds of tables that we need to create in high stress, high pressure environments like healthcare. And we have to carve out that space, because when we do, it helps us to rise to the occasion and to navigate complexity in a completely different way than when we don't have them. So I thought this might be an interesting example of that, to just kind of show a little bit of my family's perspective on this so that you can see it and also know that you can apply this in your family or in your personal life as well. Now, just one little note that I'll say here is that you can also watch the video attached with this audio, and you can do that on the YouTube channel that I've got, where I'm posting all of my podcast episodes. And with this one, it might be nice to just see the people's faces that are speaking so that you get a bit more context. So go ahead and look at that if you can. Otherwise, it'll work fine as an audio as well. Now, if you're listening here, you're probably a clinical leader, a nurse educator, or a healthcare executive that wants to implement creating a safe space at work for yourself and for your team. That's what this podcast is all about. But more and more, as I work with healthcare professionals, they're commenting and letting me know that this is really great information for me to apply at home as well. And so that's been my experience. And that's some of the clients that I work with, are their experience as well. And so I wanted to share this with you as just another facet of what can happen when you create a safe space. So I trust you'll enjoy it. And without further ado, let's get right into the show.
Nice to see you guys. I was just saying to Jordan yesterday how we haven't seen you, like, physically been with you since Kara's wedding. I'm super grateful for this call to be able to, like, see you in real time and, like, stay connected, though. It's really important. Because I think, for me anyway, when people kind of get out of sight, they tend to get out of mind a little bit. And I forget how important they are to me. And if I get to see them on a regular basis, then it's like, okay, yes, I value these people. Yeah, there's just something about having somebody, or like a scheduled appointment of somebody in your life that you get to see on a regular basis, and that consistency and reliability of it. It just feels supportive, and it feels good to know that you have that.
Yeah, as long as the meeting with your family is like that. For a lot of people, it's not, right? Everybody dreads Thanksgiving dinner for a reason, right?
I feel like we've put in the effort to make it that way, though. You know, like I don't think it just came because, you know, we decided to meet on a regular basis. I think we both individually did our own work and then came together and did our work with one another. Like, it wasn't just this, oh, all of a sudden everything's fine. You know, like, we put in the effort.
Actually, the time. We set aside time, which denotes value, and we worked at it. You know, there's times that I didn't want to be here.
I don't think it's just this meeting. There were subjects that had to be broached and things that had to be said, and we found our way through it. It was certainly life-giving. And it led to, gee, wouldn't it be a good idea if we started seeing each other regularly? Is that your original idea, Trace? Where did that come from?
We had definitely all sort of done our own work. That was true. And I couldn't help but notice that there was a feeling of distance between us as well. You know, you kind of go into those times hoping for what you've always wanted in a family, which is closeness, intimacy, acceptance, unconditional support and love. And at the same time, those times together weren't really like that, not at least for me, because there was judgment. There was, silent patterns that we all sort of played through that were just sort of, we went, in my opinion, that we went through, going through the motions. We weren't really talking about real issues, having real conversations that were meaningful, in my opinion. But I think the big component that has been transformative for me in this has been, in one word, presence. And that's presence with each other, but also for me, presence with my own inner fears, anxieties, judgment, all the things that kind of have held me back from having authentic relationship with you guys.
Each one of us, I believe, have been able to feel the presence and the willingness to be present from each other. And it's a powerful feeling and reliance. I can rely on that.
Mm-hmm.
That you want to be here, that it cares, that matters to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the only way that happens is if you're willing to accept each other unconditionally and accept yourself in that unconditionally too. Because for me, at times on these calls, there have been times when I've been triggered. There have been times when I've been judgmental. There have been times when I've had my own inner stuff going on. So at that point, what I did that was different was presence with that stuff and being with that, accepting that. And somehow that gave me the ability to accept the people around me as well, right? If I can accept myself, then I can accept you. And if I can accept you, then compassion shows up for me, and compassion shows up for the people that are around me too.
I think that's kind of an innate gift that you have in some ways, Trace, because for me, even just becoming aware of what's happening inside of me has been challenging. And your ability to kind of do that, encapsulate that within yourself, and then let that kind of play out, I think that's an inherent gift that you have as a human being and a God-given gift. Because I think most people don't naturally do that. It's a skill that requires effort.
Yeah.
At least it does for me. Like, yeah. I don't know. I'm not always the most self-aware of what's happening inside of me until I leave the situation. I think about it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what was happening. In the moment, it really is something you have to train yourself to do.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this has been an ongoing thing for me that started really back with some of the rude awakenings that I've had in my life. An illness that just about killed me, my daughters going right off the rails and into addiction and mental health issues that for me felt completely terrifying that I was going to lose one of them. You know, that was a really big turning point for me to go from outside to inside and to start to notice the absolute PTSD crippling anxiety and terror that was going on inside of me all the time. Now, at that time, I was totally unaware of that. You know, like at work, I was an HR nightmare, quite frankly. Like I was getting into trouble with HR because even though I was performing great and creating millions of dollars worth of work, I was also, you know, I made everybody cry at some point, you know, like, I mean, and that sounds, and in my own family too. I've made everybody in my own family and outside, like at a workplace.
Including yourself.
And most, yeah, that was actually the most thing that I was crying about, and so I had trauma, I had PTSD, but I didn't know that. I was actually reactive and full of anxiety and taking it out on the world around me. So that what you're describing, Kim, developed out of that total desperation to survive and thrive and do something different. And really what the catalyst was for me was I knew that I was going to completely lose my kids if I didn't change, you know, if I didn't do something different. But I still thought that was about changing them, right? Like if I can just get my damn kids to listen, you know, if they just listen. Now, when I realized that it was actually the way that I showed up with them was actually the whole game. It wasn't what I was saying. It was learning how to love and accept myself inside of what was going on, appreciate myself, and create a safe space for me and for them. And then when that happened, everything changed, like everything, man. And it didn't, you know, looking back, it looks like it happened overnight. It didn't. It was like a struggle. I can't count the amount of times that I felt totally triggered by one of my daughters. I'm like just desperately trying to just breathe one breath without saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. Just sit there and just kind of like literally like that, hanging on, white knuckling it. And then I take another breath and then another breath. And what happened was I would get to like the fourth or fifth breath and I would like get through the wave of emotion and reaction coming at me from my kids, my daughters, where they were. And all of a sudden, there was these pockets of moments that happened when I watched them shift as a result of my level of consciousness. I watched them shift with my level of compassion. And all of a sudden, they started to talk to me and they started to move towards me. And that was completely mind-blowing because my brain told me that I had to fix it or do something. And for me to do nothing and to just be was really hard at first, like really hard at first, you know.
Just a quick pause to today's podcast. Are you having a challenge as a clinical leader with one or more individuals who you find activate you on your team? Or maybe you're noticing that oftentimes you want to be able to communicate with people, but in the heat of the moment, it's difficult for you because you're having a difficult time regulating yourself. Well, I totally understand this. This has been some of the biggest challenges in my life as a leader and as a human being. And so I created a free resource for clinical leaders, nurse educators, and healthcare executives called the Relationship Regulator. It's a mini course that will show you step by step a framework that may serve you very powerfully in this area. So if you want to download the Relationship Regulator for free, click in the show notes and you'll find that resource for you today. Now, back to the show.
About a year into that, maybe two, I then initiated this call with you guys. And I had learned some coaching. I had some more skills. I had some more practices. I was doing that at work. Things were changing, but still my family system, my family of origin was not where I knew and longed for it to be. I knew it could be different, right? Anyways, Ram Dass said, if you really think that you're enlightened, go and live with your mom and dad for 2 weeks.
That's funny.
That is next level enlightenment. If you really think that you got it together. And so when we started this call, for me, it fucked me up a lot of time. I'll just be honest. Like, I was literally back to the white knuckle in it and just like, oh my God, I'm going to breathe. But what people teach about this that's systemic and really powerful for me is that our presence and consciousness is our natural way of being. And that is the way to create something different. And it also heals the stuff that's happened in the past. You know, it's like God gave us this technology to use so that we can heal from some of the things that there's just no way you can intellectually find a way to be free from. There's some wounds that just don't seem to heal in a traditional way. And so what I found was that presence and that technology that God's given us through that presence actually heals. I feel like the past has been complete for a long time between me and you, Kim, and mom and dad. Like, I don't really feel any residue anymore, whereas before I did.
I remember a time when your mother and I were on our hands and knees in the bedroom crying out to God for help. Like, we didn't know what to do. And what advice we managed to get from people was really just surface stuff. Like and we decided between us that we didn't know what to do, that we had all but thought we had lost you, both of you. And we decided that from that point on, we needed to be available. We stopped playing cards. We came home and tried to be available, which wasn't an easy thing to do at all.
It was pretty discouraging.
It's like we had it shoved in our face so many times, it was unbelievable. But then this stuff started happening, The biggest awakening moment for me personally was learning that you guys wanted this, that you were as willing to forgive our mistakes as we were, like for you. And it became, we all made mistakes. We all suffered. We all had to learn. But you guys became available too. That was it. That was the shining star.
Dad and I were down on our knees at the end of the bed. I mean, we didn't have anywhere else to turn. And literally, we were down on our knees weeping over you guys. And look where you are now. Like, I'm so grateful. My greatest wish has always been that you're whole, that you don't suffer from my mistake or our mistakes. And I'm very grateful. Thank you, you two.
Thanks for not giving up on us.
Yeah, well, that definitely goes both ways. I want to acknowledge and recognize the way that our Indigenous practice, they say all my relations, because they look back at the moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas before them that have helped them to get to where they are. And I think of Alma, I think of your mom, Dad, and the way that she was praying for us a long time ago, right? Like, she was praying for us a long time ago. So I just want to recognize that. And I really didn't realize how important presence was until I was in my 40s, So it's pretty cool to see the way that is going forward into their lives and into Sarah's life. And, and I think of Kim and your kids. So I don't know. I feel pretty grateful for that. All right. Well, love you guys. Yeah. We'll see you next Sunday. What's that? A virtual hug?
Yes.
Oh, a virtual hug.
I'm going to hug like you guys and never let you go.
Have a great week, guys.
Bye. Welcome to the end of the show. I hope that served you and that example from our family inspired you to look at things that you could do with your family or even with your team as well. Now, if this show did resonate with you, would you take a moment and give our show a rating and a review? This is really important for us to be able to amplify the message that we want to about transforming healthcare cultures. So if you give us a rating and a review for the show, it helps us get the message out to others who can be on the show, but also others that are working in clinical leadership today that would love to get the support as well. So if you can take that moment, I would really appreciate it. Now, thanks so much again for listening. And remember to be a safe space.